B2C tends to be a little bit more transactional, right? You're basically a consumer has a need, whether they want to refinance their home or buy a new home, and that need needs to be solved in a near real term time frame. So, a lot of it's very transactionally based versus B2B tend to have longer sales cycles. So there's a lot of, you have to do a lot of there's a lot of relationship building. There's still some general marketing that's very similar to like what you would do on social media, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera. But what I've always thought was interesting was that B2C, you can do a little bit more transactional advertising. So, we would do things like Google ads. We were even a client of Consumer Affairs at one point. There was also some interesting things with B2C that I think are very important that people overlook. So one of them is reputation management. So, nothing can tank a brand faster in the B2C space than not taking care of your reputation. So going through monitoring some of these third-party sites, engaging with partners like Consumer Affairs, Better Business Bureau, whatever it may be, and making sure that when people are searching for your brand online, that they are consistently monitoring that, driving traffic, the reviews to that, and are constantly engaged with their customer base.
As an employee, right? One, you do have to be cognizant, especially in a platform like LinkedIn, that like it or not, you are representing the company you work for. You would also want to make sure that your company is supportive of that. There's a lot of benefits for the company to have people that have a personal brand, right? Like I've been on calls with partners of the brand, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we saw what you've said on LinkedIn," and that is helpful for our sales team and our partnerships team because they're like, "Oh, well," because they can now. Well, there's lots of reasons from my perspective, but because I do speak about legal topics a lot, and they can go back and say, "This site is legitimate because this guy knows what he's talking about."
If you're doing a B2B rebrand, I think there's obviously, I would say the vanilla things of a rebrand is, you typically you change the logo, you're going through and changing maybe your font styles, et cetera. But there are other things that you need to take into account, like when you're going to certain trade shows, you got to make sure that all the stuff that you may have paid for to build in the past has to be rebuilt with the new brand and logo and design, et cetera. On a B2C side, really, when you're dealing with the rebrand, there's many different needs for a rebrand. So, like as an example, if your original product that you offered was only for like a very, very niche market and you're looking to expand, that may be a reason to do a rebrand of some sort.
When we talk about branding, brand spending, there's two different types of ad spending. A lot of us are in performance marketing where you spend $1, you expect to make $1.20. That's not really branding. You're pretty sure you're going to make a return on that ad spend, and that's why you're spending it accordingly. Whereas a lot of times with branding, we're talking about SEO, we're talking about offline, TV, radio, or maybe even it's just display advertising throughout the internet too, where there's a really long tail on that ad spend where you may or may not see a return on that ad spend, but nonetheless, branding is of course that water level that lifts all boats. And so as long as you're consistently having that presence, that branding presence, then it should raise that water level for all of your other marketing channels. The trick for our business model is the consumer is going to start on one place and end up on another place. So they're starting on our chart, which is a list of the top 10 brands for whatever product or service the consumer was searching for. And when a consumer clicks on that, they're leaving our chart and going to the brand's landing page. So that in and of itself is something of a disjointed process. It's certainly different than traditional lead gen where, like a Tree or Lower My Bills or, Queen Street Properties, some of the other places that I've been as well, where that consumer experience is hosted entirely on one form, and then the consumer goes through, answers the questions, and then is matched with service providers.
But when you're doing the paid social, there's lots of things you have to be careful about in there. How are you targeting people, right? Like, why did I get an ad and Michael didn't? Like, or Michael did? Are you going after people who wear glasses, right? Just for that example, or people, and make sure that you're not having discriminatory practices in there. It's really, really like interesting, because I do think we're seeing a lot of attention from the CFPB and the FTC regarding bias and especially in algorithms, but not only in algorithms, but like, why are you making some of the marketing decisions you're making? There's so many options for consumers to leave complaints and comments, and you have to be incredibly diligent about that, because there's a lot of regulations that say any complaint on a reasonable location has to be handled.